afternoon and thanks for joining us. I'm Judy Simpson. It's the first Thursday of the month, which means we're in the kitchen with Across the Fence. Today we're going to salute our Vermont sugar makers with our annual cooking segment using maple syrup. We like to call it the sweetest show of the year. Joining me with some of their favorite recipes are Carolyn Peak from Williamstown, along with Deb Plumley and Lynn Jarvis, both from South Hero. This month, one of you lucky viewers will win this 196-page cookbook, Mom's Best Crowd Pleasers, with more than 100 recipes donated by our own Deb Plumley, and she will be making a recipe from the book in just a few minutes. And at the end of the show, we'll be toasting our sugar makers with some maple mulled cider, another recipe from the book. Thanks, Deb. Another one of you will win these 3 sets of historic maple recipes that were presented on Across the Fence more than 5 decades ago. Originally from a collection of Irene Miner, they were recently given to us by her son Steve from South Hero, and we'll be making several antique recipes from this collection on the show today. A big thanks to Steve for thinking of us, and I'll let you know how you can enter to win our free drawing at the end of the show. You can't beat Vermont maple syrup.
No, you can't.
Well, I'll let you get to it.
Sounds great. So I'm going to start with this recipe from Maple Bars, and this was first used on Across the Fence April 5th, 1963, and was submitted by Jeanette Harvey of Rochester, Vermont. Sugar, butter, and maple syrup are creamed together. Stir in an egg, some flour, baking powder, and rolled oats. The original recipe called for a cup of finely ground walnuts or a coconut. I like both, so I used a half cup of each. And I also substituted maple flavoring for the vanilla extract for some added maple flavor. The batter is spread in an 8-inch pan and baked at 350 degrees for about 30 to 35 minutes. The cake-like bars are moist and flavorful, and this is truly a timeless recipe. Now, my next viewer recipe, I'm going to move it up here, was submitted in March of 1957 for an Across the Fence maple recipe contest. And this was submitted by Mrs. Arvin Bashaw of Richford. She notes, a quick dessert even the most inexperienced cook can turn out. So start with peeled and sliced apples lined in your baking dish. Top with maple syrup to coat. Make a batter mixture with shredded cheddar cheese, which I think adds a nice flavor to this, some flour, baking soda, salt, and milk to make a drop biscuit-like consistency. So dollop spoonfuls on your apple syrup mixture and bake at 425. You want to use a fairly high heat because you want the biscuits to brown and you don't want them to be doughy. This is wonderful served warm with a dollop of whipped cream. And I'd like to show the viewers what this looks like. See if I can do this. Just flip it over. See, you've got this wonderful mixture of syrup and apples, my 2 favorites, with a little bit of whipped cream. And you can flavor your whipped cream with some spices or maple syrup. It's all yum yum. So that is from the Vintage Maple Recipes from Steve Miner. Now, in the cookbook that Judy mentioned that we're giving away, here is a recipe for maple baked beans. I use local dried yellow beans and the robust grade of maple syrup. I'm going to tilt it up a bit here for the viewers. Soak your beans overnight, drain, and cook in fresh water just until tender. Add ketchup, sliced onions, some mustard, the maple syrup, and a teaspoon of allspice. Cook this in a low oven covered until the beans are simmering in a thick, sweet sauce. We know spring is just around the corner, so this might be the first thing for your next outdoor cookout, these maple baked beans. Now, I'm sure our viewers have heard of Chex Mix. I'd like to invite you to try this recipe for maple bacon party mix. Start by cooking a ½ pound of bacon, extra crispy, and break into small pieces. Set that aside. Take 6 cups of Chex cereal. You can mix corn, rice, and wheat. I used all rice Chex, making this a gluten-free snack for anyone. Add a cup of roasted peanuts and 1/2 to 1/2 teaspoon of cayenne pepper. Stir together in a microwave-safe bowl. In a small bowl, combine 4 tablespoons of butter and 4 tablespoons of maple syrup. Warm in your microwave until the butter's melted. Add the butter mixture to the cereal and stir very well. Microwave on high for 3 minutes, stirring every minute so the maple syrup, the sugar in it, doesn't scorch. Add your cooked bacon and a small amount of sea salt to taste. Spread out on a baking sheet to cool, and you've got a wonderful snack mixture. And Carolyn, I'm noticing to the side here, you've got some nuts over there that look rather interesting. Can't wait to hear about those.
They're cashews. Would you like one?
I would love one. Thank you. I'll let you get to it.
Okay. Well, my kitchen really smelled good while I was fixing these things. And I'm going to start with the viewer recipe from Irene Miner from South Hero. And we've already talked about her. So this is a maple fruit bread. And it's got, you know, the standard things like an egg and baking powder and flour and all that sort of thing. But then it's also got a cup of maple syrup in it. And I've sliced this open so you can see what it looks like. It has the grated rind of an orange and some orange juice and nuts besides. And I think this will be just a really nice bread to serve. Well, in the recipe thing, there's also a recipe for maple butter, so you could put that onto the bread and go for it. My next one is Brussels sprouts with maple syrup. Now, my husband and I both really like Brussels sprouts. And this one, it's kind of interesting because you cut your Brussels sprouts in half, you lay them into a frying pan, a big frying pan with olive oil, and you let those Brussels sprouts cut side down get nice and brown. And you can see these are nice and brown. And then you have your maple syrup, some butter. You mix everything together. It's got parsley, chives, and sage in it. And you can just have a really nice vegetable to go with your meal. Now, I am also going to put onto my plate, excuse me here, I'm being Butterfingers this afternoon, I mean. Maple cinnamon applesauce. This takes 6 apples, maple syrup, cinnamon, lemon juice, and some sea salt. And you just cook that all down, and you have a lovely applesauce to go with your meal with the Brussels sprouts, whatever else you like. You're all set. Now, next, up here in the front, I have maple bacon mixed nuts. Well, I didn't use mixed nuts because I really prefer cashews. And so that's what I used, but you can use any nuts that you want. You can have, then you cook them in maple syrup and water, and you use dark brown sugar and confectioner sugar also to give it a little extra sweet. You cook it up and lay it out on your pan, let it cool, and you've got a lovely treat. Now, lastly, I have one called maple blueberry syrup. And this is just blueberries and water, lemon, and mint leaves and maple syrup. You mix that all up, cook it down real thick, and we're going to put a little bit in the bottom of the glass. Yeah, if we can do that without getting too messy. Add a seltzer water or soda water to it. Stir it up, and you've got a nice drink, especially when summer gets here. You could have this nice and cool, ready to go with a maple blueberry syrup. So, Lynn, you're
Now, if I didn't have to speak, I'd drink that up at this very second. Well, thank you, Carolyn. Well, before I show you some of my favorite recipes, we have some viewers that we would like to thank. First, Eleanor Newton from Burlington, and at age 86, she still enjoys preparing our recipes. And from Jonesville, Edith Slayton, who in her late 80s just became a subscription member. Judy Sherburn from Waterford just became a subscription member as well. Susan Belisle from Swanton says she watches us every day and makes Across the Fence her lunch break. Josephine Cartier from Burlington writes that she enjoys my travel shows. And Bristol's Arlene Fagus says, thanks for all the great eating over the years. And thanks to all of you for your cards and note. We do read and appreciate every single one of them. Well, I'm going to begin with some main dish meals. First is my maple pork chop dish. You can see it right here. First, you make a sauce by combining maple syrup, pear slices, chopped onions, butter, and ginger. And when the chops are almost done, put that sauce in and let everything cook and simmer. When you're ready to serve, put the chops on the plate like this. And now comes that pear maple sauce. And just look at this. Now, if you haven't had a pear maple flavor combination before, you are in for a treat. It's just delicious, something a little bit different that I know your family and friends will enjoy. And I could just eat the pear sauce, actually, it's that good. All right, now my next main dish is right here. And I found this in a recipe, in a selection of recipes from the Monadnock Shopper News about 20 years ago, and it's sort of the flavor of Southern fried chicken with a hint of Vermont maple. And here it is. It's this chicken brushed with a mixture of maple syrup along with mustard and garlic powder, and then it's coated with some crushed cornflakes and finely chopped pecans. This is delicious, and I wish all of you here were to sample this along with us just as soon as the show is over. Now, to accompany my main dishes, here are some maple potato rolls. And this recipe was sent in by Judy Perdue of Washington. She's a regular contributor. It's a yeast roll, and it takes a little bit of time to make, but it's well worth the effort because this delicate maple flavor is delicious. The recipe makes 3½ dozen, and they freeze well for later use. Now for dessert, I'm going to go to that 1963 publication that was given to us by Steve Miner in honor of his mother. And the first recipe I'm going to show you is this apple upside down cake. It was originally sent in by Carolina Anderson of Rutland. It's made like the typical upside down cake, and this maple apple flavor is delicious, and I know your family will enjoy it. And what a great story to tell if you take this to a potluck and tell the folks there this was made 53 years ago and Across the Fence. I think that is amazing. It's a wonderful story. It actually gets me a little emotional. This is from Mrs. Royal Smith of Brattleboro. She first sent it in 1963. It's her maple oatmeal cookies. And they're easy to make by sifting flour. You add some oatmeal, chopped nuts, an egg, and some maple syrup, and you cook for about 8 to 12 minutes at 400 degrees. Serve with a glass of milk, and they are delicious. And we thank Mrs. Royal Smith for that recipe, although I'm sure she's not with us anymore. And my last recipe comes from Willie Stowe of Colchester, and it's her maple apple cheddar pie. And Judy, if this isn't the real taste of Vermont,
look at this, would you just?
I
amazing.
don't know what is. Easy to make. You just put those 3 ingredients in with some flour, sugar, cinnamon, and nutmeg, and bake it. And this is for you.
Thank you very much.
You're
what a
welcome.
deal. Now, we have a couple of different ways to get these recipes. Of course, you can go online to the Across the Fence website, go to uvm.edu/extension, and click on the link to Across the Fence. You'll find the recipes on the left-hand side of the webpage. To get the recipes by mail, send $2 in a stamped self-addressed business-size envelope to Maple Recipes, Box 188, South Hero, Vermont, 05486. Please remember to include $2 and a stamped self-addressed envelope. Your envelope will be used in the free drawing for the winner of the cookbook and the maple recipes used here on Across the Fence more than 50 years ago. If you're not ordering today, use the address on your screen to be entered into the free drawing. Just send along your name and address. Good luck to all of you. We'll be back May 5th featuring recipes with an international flair. In closing, a maple mulled cider toast to all the sugar makers in the Channel 3 viewing area for the production of the sweet maple season. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll see you again next time on Across the Fence.